part of a bigger picture, part of a bigger plan, to have the NDCs, local government bodies generally, play a greater role in addressing many of the problems we face in the community, where the regions and the central government can't reach people at the household level. And so we've asked them to focus on a few areas, largely to fill the gaps where the region and the central government cannot intervene, namely in the area of small drainage and irrigation works in the villages, because there has been a big complaint from many of the villages and wards in the city and towns about the neglect of internal drainage system. While we focus heavily on the outfalls and water management generally and flood control, they still have many of the internal drains clogged up, and it's creating problems for people. And so consistent with that, we bought this year 66 excavators, mini excavators, that have already been given out to the local government bodies, and they are now procuring another 20 or so to go to the remaining local government bodies. But the subvention, increased subvention from 5 million per year to 30 million per year, would allow the NDCs to have resources to operate the equipment so that they can give better service to the areas under their control. We asked these bodies to focus on cemeteries, and largely cemeteries, because people have been complaining. This is one of the issues that they raise anytime we visit communities, about the state of disrepair that the cemeteries are faced with across the country. And we've asked them to focus on upgrading the cemeteries, or approaches, and clearing the bush. If you listen to or you follow their live on many of the president's outreaches or the ministers, you would hear people talk about, oh, the cemetery is overgrown with a jungle, and they have like large amount of bees living there now, and stuff of that nature. So when people go there to bury the dead, they're confronted with this uncomfortable situation. This is not a task for central government or the region. It's a task for the local government bodies. They have not been addressing this with diligence, and so we spoke last week when I met with them at the convention center. We spoke about the need to address this issue, and we gave them the resources to do so. And the third area is garbage collection, which is a major issue countrywide. And we have already been procuring compactors for many of the NDCs and the larger ones and the towns across our country. But we're hoping that the tractor and trailer and the other equipment we've given to them would assist with this task. We have also asked all of the NDCs to identify an area within the local government bodies that we can develop as a landfill site, because they complain about having to move garbage long distances, and it's costly for them to do so because they don't have the resources based on the limited tax base that they have. And so we are going to spend a huge sum of money working with them to ensure that in every local government body in Guyana, that they have their own landfill site that's properly managed there, and they offer a decent service to the people who reside within those local government bodies. So we had a really good meeting, but I don't want you to think that this is just about clearing bush in the cemetery or collecting garbage. It's part of the plan that we have spoken of to give greater responsibilities to local government bodies, to devolve some of the functions and authority that the region and the central government have into the hands of these bodies, and to ensure that they're better equipped to manage this task. And that means capacity building at the local government level, ensuring financial probity for the resources that they receive. All of these as part of a network to empower local government bodies. The other issue that kept coming up here, I think Kaichor News mentioned it, and then there have been a lot of issues about foreign currency and businesses complaining that they don't have access to, or they don't have timely access to foreign currency. So we have dealt with this matter many times, and once again I want to repeat that we're looking at this issue carefully. The market had been clearing in its aggregate form, and this variable, that is the exchange rate, is one that we have to manage carefully to ensure that we do not have a steep appreciation of the currency, nor should we have a major depreciation of the currency. And the central bank plays a very important role in ensuring that they keep track of what's happening in this market, and its capacity to intervene it has the capacity to intervene at any magnitude to ensure that the rate remains competitive, but it does not appreciate nor depreciate too much. If it appreciates, that is a fear of ours. You know, in countries that have windfall, particularly coming from oil and gas, that there's a tendency for the rate to appreciate, the so-called Dutch disease. And we've dealt with this matter before, how it would affect the agricultural sector and also manufacturing. So we've had a careful management of this variable, very careful management of it, led by the central bank. We also have a situation where we believe that a lot of the demand for foreign currency is not coming for transactions, domestic transactions. That there are, because some countries in the region, particularly Trinidad and Tobago, has foreign exchange control, and the business community there can't access foreign currency to pay for their imports. Many of them have come to Guyana, and they're ordering from Guyana for the Trinidadian market, their goods for the Trinidadian market. Therefore, that creates an additional demand for foreign exchange here in Guyana. Notwithstanding that, I met with the bankers, the Minister of Finance, right? We met with the bankers, and they told us that their combined demand, including on their credit card transactions, etc., abroad, to clear all their credit card transactions, is about $100 million. And so we injected $100 million into the system, and that should clear all of the demand at this point in time. for transactions. We caution them about, again, not creating an artificial demand by buying currency or supplying currency for people who come in from abroad, particularly given what I mentioned before. So those were two things that happened since the last time I had this press conference, but there were issues coming out of engagements that we had with the press. So I'm just giving you an update as to how they were resolved. The president made several announcements over the past couple of days too. And a few 2 weeks ago, I mentioned that you may need some additional chairs. Lloyd, could you get some chairs for this week? We have a full set of reporters. It might be something that I don't know that's happening out here. So could you get some additional chairs? Yes, please, so that the reporters can be accommodated. So yes, a few weeks ago, I mentioned also that we're hoping to conclude the arrangement with the NIS pensioners that the president had announced in October of 2024, and that we catered for in the budget that was passed earlier this year. As you would recall, we set aside $10 billion to address the issue of people who had made contributions, NIS contributions, over many years, almost a lifetime of work, who would reach the age of 60. But because they did not have enough contributions, they did not qualify for an NIS pension. So they keep coming to us all the time. Every time we go to communities, people complain about the national insurance scheme. Sugar workers, former bauxite workers, public servants, teachers, every category of worker in the country have complained to us about problems that they have with the NIS. Some claim that they're eligible for a pension, an NIS pension, because they met the required level of contributions, but they did not receive their pension. We've resolved nearly 10,000 cases that fall into that category, where people were just treated unfairly. Then a number of people claim that they work a long period, their employers deducted their contributions, but never remitted those contributions to the NIS. So they were not eligible based on the NIS's record. Those people who do not qualify, and there's a large number who did not qualify for an NIS pension, and there's a large number of them, will not get any benefit from the NIS. Although they've made hundreds of contributions over many years based on the current system. So we thought it's grossly unfair that if you make over, say, 500 contributions to the NIS, you need 750 contributions to qualify. But if you make 500 or 600 or 749 contributions, you can get a pension, but you don't get any money back to. You don't get anything, a lump sum payment or anything from the NIS in spite of all of these years of contributing. And almost every one of you here who are working would be contributing to the NIS. So we set aside, there are about 25,000 people who fall into this category, who have had over 500 contributions, but did not make the required 750. So that's why we set aside, through a special initiative, this sum of money so it doesn't become a burden to the National Insurance Scheme because it's funded fully by the central government, to make the payments one-off payment to the NIS pensioners who did not meet the required level of contribution. Earlier today, I saw the way this story was written. A number of people were calling and thinking that it's old age pensioners we're talking about. Everyone who attained the age of 65 would get their old age pension, and we have doubled old age pension in the last 5 years, consistent with the promise that we made in 2020, from $20,500 per month to $41,000 per month, and it cost the Treasury $37 billion per year. So that's separate. Old age pension is something else. We have doubled, we've kept our commitment, we have doubled that. I'm speaking about the NIS pension or the NIS contributors here, so that there's no confusion out there, because people kept calling and saying, when are we getting the check? But they don't fall into this category. They're not NIS contributors. So let's make that clear here today. So if you had between 500 to 549 contributions, you'll get 260,000, a check for 260,000. Between 550 to 599, 390,000. Between 600 to 699, 520,000. And between 700 to 749, $650,000. So they would start implementing this almost immediately. And those people who are eligible, I urge them to check with the NIS so that they can get the check. This is something that would help 25,000 people who fall into this category. And they would get back some money that they contributed to the NIS over the many years because they didn't qualify for an NIS pension. Now, separately, you know that NIS over time has been paying out more benefits than what it's receiving in contribution. So at one stage there was this question that NIS, if it continues long enough on this trend, could go bankrupt. We've made it clear that will not happen. We will make major injections from the Treasury, and that would be one of the things. We have already done this. We will do that in a major way in the next term to ensure that the NIS pension can also be increased periodically, because although we have doubled old age pension, the NIS pension has not increased significantly because it's based on the state of their finances. And then I want to also say to people, because many of them believe the NIS is government. The government is a contributor to the NIS scheme, but you have private contributors too. The funds are not government funds. The government doesn't own the NIS, but we will have to ensure that the NIS not only remains solvent, but can have major injection from the Treasury, from the government, so that they can meet their obligation to their contributors, which are most of the working people of the country. So I wanted to explain this because this has been a nagging issue for a long time. People, I know they felt aggrieved every time I've made all these contributions and I never got a cent back from the NIS because I didn't qualify. So now they're going to get 25,000 of those individuals will get some money from the NIS, but it does not put the finances of the NIS in jeopardy because it's funded, fully funded by the central government. So this is an important initiative that we talk about for years. We work with people. I told you up till a couple of weeks ago, when I was in Berbice, the NIS issues came up. The sugar workers always raise this issue too. Sugar workers and farmers, and not farmers, but public servants too, and people who retired sometime in the past. And this would be helpful to them. And that's why I said, we listen to people when we go on the ground, almost every initiative. So when we hear people complain, you go to a community meeting and you hear someone get up and say, I've been treated badly by the NIS, or something like of that sort, or I can't get this fixed, then we don't see it as a problem. We don't see it as a criticism of the state. It's an opportunity to help to resolve people's issues, and we encourage it. Along the same line, last week I spoke of those who were unfairly removed from the public assistance register. And so I got a call from my office, and several government agencies got calls from people who felt that they've been unfairly removed, or their application was not processed in time or with due diligence. So I want to urge those people who feel that way to contact the ministry. Soon we'll put out all the numbers where you can call in if you believe that you fall under this category, where you've been unfairly removed by some local board who did not take account of all of your concerns. And so I just wanted to give that bit of information here. The other issue that the president spoke of recently, and these are all things that happened in the course of the last week, and I want to just highlight again how they're part of the fulfillment of our promise, or promises to people, and part of the outlook for the future. So, you know, education was part of our campaign. Our world-class education was part of our campaign in 2020. We said that one of the few areas that would benefit from increased oil spending would be the education sector. We've increased the budget in the education sector from 53 billion when we got into office to 175 billion this year. From 53 to 175 billion dollars. We have built 59 new nursery schools, 25 primary schools, 28 secondary schools. We have rehabilitated, major rehabilitation and construction of 125 others. We have increased the number of teachers from 12,000 to 15,000. When you take the number of children in public schools and you divide by the number of teachers, now the teacher to student ratio is one of the lowest in the world. One of the lowest in the world. Better than many developed countries of the world. We have increased the salaries for teachers, but more importantly, we have given for more qualified teachers we have increased the sums that they would get as allowances. So if you have a degree now, a first degree, you get a sum on top of your salary, you get an additional sum, an allowance for that. If you have a second degree, it's even higher, or a doctorate. And we've encouraged a lot of our teachers to be trained. We now train nearly 5,000 teachers through Cyril Potter College. In fact, it's more. It's about just over 2,000 at Cyril Potter College of Education. And through the Gold Scholarship Program, you have another maybe 4,000 or 5,000 teachers. So you're talking about 6,000, 7,000 of a complement of 15,000 teachers who have been exposed to either training at the Cyril Potter College, or alternately have now qualified and are doing a Gold Online Scholarship that would make them eligible to receive a higher pay once concluded. We promised 20,000 online scholarships. We now did about 30,000 so far. On training of people, TechVoc training, we have either trained or are training another 20,000, leaving out the academic training through the Gold program. We have made the University of Guyana and all tertiary level education free. So these are just some of the things we have done, if you look at it. And now the complaint was that, not complaint, but some people have been coming to us saying that the subvention, every year we used to spend about 200 million, 260 million to assist people to pay for the CXC and CAPE if they couldn't afford it. But we were not pleased the way it's being applied, because sometimes people don't know that they can apply for this, and often it doesn't get to the intended beneficiaries because it's determined by a capricious process, through a capricious process by teachers and others. So many people who needed the help could not get the help. So we just decided across the board that the government will pay for every student in the public sector and the private sector up to 8 subjects at CXC or CAPE. And so it's across the board, every school child will benefit from this. And this will remove a huge burden from their parents. It's going to cost about $600 million, but then everyone would benefit. So people don't have to go through a process that's not transparent to get this benefit. Anyone or everyone will get the benefit now. We will just pay for all the students. We also had increased the subvention, the Because We Care grant. It was zero, as you know. We promised to get it up to 50,000 per child in the 5 years. We did that. We did not promise to extend it to private children, but we did that too. Just like we did this initiative, that children who are going to private schools can benefit from both the cash grant and the payment for the CXC and CAPE, because we want everyone to benefit, whether they go to public schools or private school or not. And in the next term in office, you will see much more of this. Not just the increase of the 50,000 per child per year grant, but the process of removing the burden from parents to fund education for their children at every level, So this would help to ensure that people can keep more of the income that they have and use it for other purposes apart, because the state the government will ensure that we progressively fund education and the educational needs of our people from the Treasury directly. And this is the philosophy, the orientation that is guiding this. It's very important for us because it's part of removing that burden from parents and families. So the cost of sending a child to school should not affect whether the child goes to school or not, or the quality of education that they get, because the government will deal with this. I do not want to address the whole issue of education in the next term because, as I mentioned last week, we are looking at an entire new approach to delivering education and meeting the needs of all of our citizens for the new society that we are building. But I just want to say that this initiative is consistent with what we had promised and consistent with this issue of absorbing more and more costs that are associated with education. It's a very impactful initiative for many people, because I know I've seen the difficulties that people have had even in the tough years. Now, from last week too, and all of these things I'm talking about took place since the last press conference. So I'm just bringing you up to date as to our approach on these matters, even the ones that the President announced recently. It's part of our philosophy. Now, you would recall that last week I spoke of the tariff issue and our approach in dealing with this matter. So I explained how the tariff was calculated, that it was based on, that is the reciprocal tariff was calculated. It's based on your trade surplus with the United States of America. I pointed out the source of the data from which the calculations were made. I further pointed out that we may have some differences in import numbers recorded by the United States of America in their database versus ours. We believe we import twice as much as the United States has recorded, over $2.5 billion of imports, and they had just over $1 billion of imports from Guyana. I pointed out also that almost our entire trade surplus had arisen because of the oil exports into the United States of America. 1/3 of our oil goes into the US, our oil exports. And I pointed out that in 2020, we had a trade surplus that was maybe about $70 million, which has now grown, based on figures that the United States used, to about $4.1 billion. So those were the facts. The fact also, some people thought this tariff was targeting Guyana alone. Stupidly thought that, but there was a 10% tax for every country in the world. Well, most countries in the world across the board, and then the other category faced higher reciprocal taxes. Those are the facts of the matter. So I saw thereafter that, and I had expressed the view that we want to work with the US, we will work with the United States of America to examine all the facts surrounding the matter, and we are hoping to meet at some point in time. Since then, President Trump has announced that the reciprocal tax has been put on hold for 90 days, so that every country in the world now would pay the 10% across the board tariff, but the reciprocal tariff is now on hold for 90 days. And that the United States of America is prepared to have discussions with countries about the reciprocal tax. And that 75 countries have already reached out to the United States of America to address the question of the reciprocal taxes or tariff. So we're one of those countries. Now, I said there is no room for panic, nor should we behave in a manner that is antagonistic to the United States of America. I pointed out that we expected higher tariff because President Trump campaigned on this. We just did not know what form it will take and what the rates will be. And we discovered that when they were announced. We discovered how they were calculated and what the rates were. So we still believe that it is through engagement with the United States of America that we can resolve this matter. And that will be our approach. We have all the facts ready to present in the engagement. We are also meeting with the exporters who would be affected. A large amount of our exports are exempt, and particularly oil from the reciprocal tariff, and bauxite ore and gold exports. And these form the bulk of our exports. But there are some crucial sectors that could be badly affected, mainly the agricultural sector and their exports. So we are meeting with the exporters to understand the impact of any potential tariff. But we do have the 90 days reprieve now, and we are hoping to engage the US government within those 90 days to address this issue. So we saw from, the reason I'm going through all of this again is a call from the PNC, a statement that was widely reported in the Starbuck News and Kiteshore News about a holistic response plan. Now you know that when APNU has nothing to say, they find refuge in platitudes. When they have no policy prescription or nothing else to offer, they say these things, and also it is people-centered development, whatever it means, you know, because it must have a practical expression through your policies. But you can't talk about people-centered development and then take away the water subsidy from the pensioners like they did, or take away the grant from the children, or put taxes on baby food or data or high electricity costs that they did in government. So they just say these things. I have not seen a single suggestion that warrants a serious look that they have offered to address this issue. And they seem to want confrontation with the United States of America. They want us to explore retaliatory tariffs against the US. This is where they seem to be going. It's not only hollow, it's stupid. And so they said the tariff imposition was a result of our negligence. Now, every country in the world had to be negligent. But sometimes I don't know if people actually analyze what they say, but the good thing is that people don't read what they say anymore, because it doesn't make sense. But the tariff imposition for every country in the world, 10% across the board, as well as the reciprocal tariff for every country that runs up a trade surplus, is because of our negligence. So we should not have run up a trade surplus with the US. But our trade surplus really came about because of the export of oil, which also is exported mainly by the companies, US companies. So I'm not going to go into, I was tempted to go into the details of what they said here. The government must explore with the US administration a different formula. Anyhow, I'm not wasting my time today. I don't want to really go after APNU too much. But those were some of the things that took place since last week. So, thankfully, we got 2 signals from the US government on this matter to conclude it. One is that the tariff is on hold for 90 days. And 2, President Trump himself said, I'm looking to talk to countries about it. And we're ready to talk to them about this matter. So that's the approach that we will take on these matters. Nevertheless, we will meet with our exporters to find out what the impact of the potential, even the 10% going into the United States of America, because every country will have to pay that, will have on them. So a lot of people have called about what we spoke of last week, and the president again spoke of at the local content summit, I think it was. And particularly as they relate to small and medium scale enterprises in the future, and how the PPP will provide an opportunity in the next term, where are the policies headed to expand this sector. So we have explained, and once again, I may want to do it in a macro sense for people to understand the drift of what we have had to engage with in these years, and then why we can now transition into more qualitative issues in the next 5 years. So first of all, we had an economy when we took office that was losing momentum in every sector, largely because of the policy environment that had been created by APNU within 2015 to 2020. And that policy environment sought to increase taxes across the board on the mining sector, on agriculture, on forestry, almost every sector of the economy. 200 odd taxes and fees were levied on private sector activities and welfare of the citizens of this country. We had to recreate almost a dynamic environment for economic growth, which we did by the removal of those 200 odd taxes, and you have seen a supply response. You've seen how this stimulus changed the levels of investment in the non-oil sector. We have had robust growth in the non-oil sector in the period that we've been in office. So largely because of the change in the policy environment. That was the first task. The sector that had some energy was the oil and gas sector. However, our ability to manage and regulate the sector was non-existent. And so we set ourselves the task in the oil and gas industry to create a proper management and regulatory environment for activities in that sector. Consistent with that, we amended the Natural Resources Fund Act. We passed the new Petroleum Activities Act, updating the 1986 one. We passed the Local Content Act. We crafted a new PSA. We moved to upgrade the environmental permits by putting in place new features, cradle-to-grave management of waste, the wastewater treatment, raising the standards, and environmental tax as part of the permits. All of these things were done with a view to increase the tools available to the state to properly manage the growth and development of this industry. So that was the primary task then. Then we had another task. How do we keep pace, how infrastructurally, with the changing needs of the economy? So massive investment in infrastructure, economic infrastructure. You need power plants, you need roads, you need bridges to facilitate future growth. And the focus has been on that. The same thing you heard in the social sector. We needed to match pace in the social sector, better education, training people. That's why you heard about this investment, and in healthcare. And then focus on job creation, because nearly 80,000 people had been out of work because of the COVID and because of those who lost jobs under APNU. In the private sector alone, 60,000 people have been working since we got back into office, who are now working in 2020. Housing had ground to a halt, the development of house lots for people. We had to re-energize that. So the tasks were defined for the 5 years. We had to do all of these things now. And we still need to do some of them in the next term. So we still need to ensure that everyone who applies for a house lot gets a house lot, and we assist them to make sure that they can build a house. That's a commitment we made. We still have to continue investing in education and healthcare to raise them to international standards. So those will go into the future too. So a lot of the tasks will go into the future. But in the next term in office, we have an opportunity to do new things that would lead to qualitative changes in people's lives. So not just raising income level for all groups of people across the country, but the 500 million, for example, US per year that the public service workers earn more now, that they can also grow their resources and invest these resources and benefit from the changes in the economy. So that's why you would see a heavy focus on addressing these things. So what were the concerns? So we gave out a number of small business grants, and we've seen a growth in small business. You look at the local content certificate alone, over 1,000 Guyanese companies are now registered there and have a certificate. Companies, 80% of them were not there in 2020. 80% of them were not there. Look at the 4,000 new contracting companies, small people too. 80% of them might not have been there in 2022. So we've seen a growth in small and medium scale business. How do we grow this even further, and how do we support it? So last week I spoke of, and the President reinforced this message. We've been talking about this a long time, and the minister. We spoke about land for the small miners, critical. Opening up new lands as part of our adaptation policy, but also with the added benefit of more lands for small farmers. Diversification and creating opportunities in agriculture for small farmers like hemp and tobacco and a whole range of stuff that we're already working on so that they can do that. The forestry sector and mining, focusing more on recoveries and assistance for them to do better, go to more value added. The support services to grow these sectors, like the tissue culture lab and support from the Ministry of Agriculture. The innovation support hubs that can generate ideas, but also take a small business idea and upgrade their entire processes, including their finances. And then, of course, the key issue, financing. So I did not mention too much on the financing, but you heard what the President said. So that's why I want to come back to this matter. Because the biggest issue that people raised with us, their ability to access finance for these small and medium-scale enterprises. And there's a commitment in the next term that the small and medium enterprises development fund, maybe a lending facility that will give zero interest rates, etc., will be created to support this massive new development for thousands of Guyanese to get this support. So that's why I want to come back to this issue, because this is a crucial qualitative issue of the inclusion in the economy. This is not even financial inclusion that we spoke of separately, and financial literacy, financial inclusion, financial empowerment, the new architecture for the growth of fintech that will allow people ease of doing business, but allow a range of opportunities in that sector. I didn't even speak of that. But just for example, this is a new area that we're working on. I'm so pleased because just imagine young people now thinking about the future, or anybody who wants to train. With our plan on the digital society, all the things we're doing, and we're putting together in this term a lot of the pieces, the building blocks. So separately, we are doing the biometrics project. We started with the paperless airport. We're automating the functions of the Ministry of Home Affairs, all of their functions, from prison records to death, birth certificate, everything, criminal records, all of that being done now under a project, the Safe Country project, with build out of the hardware and the software to do facial recognition. We're moving almost immediately for traffic control to put in these cameras that could do automate, the ticketing, etc. So a lot of the pieces are being put together. But imagine that kind of society where you have fintech governing, like a lot of financial apps governing how you interface with the banking system from your phone. You don't have to go physically. Or with all of this, the digitization. If I'm being trained now, young people, they have opportunities to get jobs, thousands of jobs, because the state will need those types of skills in those areas, and then the opportunity to supply these services to in these areas, because you constantly need like cybersecurity. Maybe we just outsource cybersecurity if you're putting more stuff in virtual space, then you need stronger cybersecurity, not laws, but protection for the country, so your systems don't become vulnerable. That's a whole new opportunity. We met with a group that would mainstream, and in fact, our idea is to mainstream AI. But think about AI now, and how many Guyanese can be trained in this, but also provide. They make money from going this route by using apps, in AI apps to help with a whole range of things. Using AI to create individualized tutors maybe for every child. Every child can then have a personalized tutor that they don't have to, that can assess all their weaknesses simply by the tests that they do, some baseline tests, and then tailor a program to address the need of that particular child. It's so exciting. So that is where we're going in the next term. We're not, as I said before, the tasks were defined. We just had to get back some energy in the economy, people working, dealing with the infrastructure. So the roads are going to continue to be built. I'm not saying we'd stop doing that, but now it's time to transition into qualitative issues. And the opportunities are going to be vast. If we have innovation hubs, we don't want these innovation hubs to be run by foreigners necessarily, but the innovation, and we have them all around the country to assist people to move into business development. But there's lots of work to be done still. To get this happening, we have to modernize mindset of people, including in the state sector. We have to create frameworks. We have to do a whole range of stuff. We had some central discussions with the central bank last week, and you know, the mindset has to change to be more accommodating, safeguarding our financial sector from illicit money, keeping it safe, ensuring that the banks are solvent and safe, and they do the stress testing of our banks, etc. But at the same time, creating room for growth in a whole range of services and driving it from the regulatory perspective. So a lot of that thinking is going on now, and the work that we will do for the next 5 years. And we're putting it out there because we already want the discussion to start in society. Too often, every day we're discussing some what's the meaning of scrape head. You know, like I see that for the last week, people trying to get a definition for scrape head. And we should like be really be focusing and sharing our ideas on these and say, we heard these people, these are our ideas. That's what we want to put out so that people can focus on these issues. And you would hear us trying to steer the conversation into programs, policies for the future. Where our country is going, where do we want to take people? We are clear in the People's Progressive Party. We're very clear on these matters. And we will over period define. And so you already heard some specific areas, like the President mentioned them too, we mentioned them weeks ago. We want to take the fertilizer plant. We'd have the first 50 million cubic of gas that will come in for free, will generate the 300 megawatts of power. We'd produce LPG. We can only use less than a third of that LPG. We'd have to export it. We don't want to give one man the ability to control this LPG or even the state. We want to create an opportunity where ordinary Guyanese because it's going to be a profitable venture. Even if we sell the LPG for reduced costs, I've dealt with the numbers here to show you how big the margin is from the landed costs and the procurement costs and the landed costs here till the time we buy it in these 20-pound cylinders, etc. There's a massive margin there. If we can cut the margin, significantly reduce the cost, and still have people make a lot of money, and we want Guyanese to make a lot of those, to make the resource, or making money, people talk about that as a generalized concept, but to be investing in this, particularly small people, so that they can benefit in a real way from that. And the same thing with the fertilizer plant that we're building, because this would be a profitable activity. So we're going to cherry pick some activities out of the oil and gas sector that are lucrative and democratize the structure for investing in these, not keeping them in the government sector or allowing a foreign company to cream the benefits in these areas, but allowing our people to put their money so they can make some the money that they have maybe sitting not earning enough into these areas. And so there are quite a few of these projects that we're looking at. We don't have to, we can do this and still leave room for foreign investment, big foreign investment. It's not the exclusion of foreign investment, but it's the inclusion of our people in a lot of these things. So I hope that comes out. But these are only two areas we're identifying. We want to identify at least maybe 10 areas where we can do this in, so that people know that in the future they'll be able to invest in these issues. This week we had this unfortunate tragedy in Linden, where two of our people lost their lives. And by now, I think most of you are aware of what took place. I'm not going to repeat the details of what happened there. President Ali met with the families of the victims, and he promised a full, impartial investigation into both incidents, both policemen. In both incidents, the police are under close arrest, and once the investigations are done, then whatever the outcome is, action will be taken. And he assured the families of this. He also offered some help to the families. I spoke also with both families. As General Secretary of the PPP, our party leaders in the area visited both families, and I spoke with them yesterday. In fact, I spoke with one of the aunts the day before yesterday, but at that time the entire family had gone to see the president at Watuka House. But I spoke with them and I assured them again that the People's Progressive Party and the government will not cover up anything in relation to these cases, that we are interested in a full, impartial investigation too, and whatever the outcome, the consequences would be felt by those involved. And I also express my deepest condolences to the families. So, as predicted, every time we have a tragedy in this country, every time we have an incident of this nature, you can almost predict what will happen. The opposition will show up there not to even listen to the families. They show up there to start division. They don't go there because they love the victims of these tragedies. They show up there to exploit the situation, to create division in our country, and to generate street protests or mislead people into thinking that no action would be pursued by the state. So first of all, at the beginning, they started off by saying, we sent the police to kill the gentleman. That's how they started. That's how extreme they get. And that the PPP, it was directed by the PPP. Well, most sensible people know that's not true. And then the leader of the opposition said, we want to stoke unrest and ethnic insecurity. If you examine the people who have been stoking ethnic insecurity almost from historically, and they continue to do so, it would be only one group. It's the AFC and the PNC. They've done this all their lives. That's their playbook. And they do it every single day by making every issue about race. We're the only multiracial party. We're the only party that does not have an interest in stoking ethnic insecurity, because we are working at broadening the base of our party, and we have been successful at doing this. People of every race, mixed people, Indo-Ghanese, Afro-Ghanese, Amerindian, are all prominently represented in the People's Progressive Party, and they're part of our family. We're the only party that has no interest whatsoever to stoke ethnic insecurity. And so they're the ones. But in the same statement where they accused us of trying to do this, he repeats, the leader of the opposition repeats the lie that was told to the people of the country. We remember the dark days of the death squads under the PPP watch, where over 1,400 lives were lost. So a couple months ago, Nigel Hughes mentioned 1,400 persons, the same figure. When we pointed out that it's an absolute lie based on what the record of the Starbuck News that they did, and they did a detailed dossier of everyone who was killed in that period. It didn't even amount to 400 that they were claiming, and it involved Indo-Ghanese, Afro-Ghanese, it involved the bandits who were killed, and the victims, it involved policemen. You had a couple of people there who were not even killed, who they claim were killed, and who are still alive today. So, when Nigel Hughes was confronted with this at the press conference, he ran away from the question about the 1,400. And he said, you know, I've been working in the sector a long time. You working as a lawyer for a long time doesn't mean that when you say 1,400 people were killed, we must believe you, contrary to the published statistics. But he couldn't answer it. Now they repeat this again in their press release. Norton repeats this. This is how they work. Same playbook all the time. Nothing new. So Nigel Hughes runs down there again and blames the PPP, but then they talk about approaches to extrajudicial killing. You remember in 2018 when 3 persons were shot and killed by the police on the seawall. Nigel Hughes showed up at the police station and said he had a witness who saw the shooting. Now, what happened in that case? Was there a commission of inquiry? Nothing happened. This was when his party was in power and the PNC was in power. AFC and PNC were in power. 2018, he showed up with a eyewitness there, and nothing happened. Absolutely nothing happened. He doesn't recall that, or maybe he recalls it conveniently. But it's the same Nigel Hughes who showed up, and he has another eyewitness there too. Showed up yesterday, or the day before yesterday. We know that they didn't go there to help the people of Linden. They didn't go there to help or to express sympathy with the victims and the families of the victims. They went there because it's politically expedient for them to do so, to make a racist statement against the PPP and stoke unrest and dissent. Only for one purpose, like vultures. They do this all the time. They prey on these tragedies, the personal tragedies of people. They didn't go to Linden all the time. He went there once, and remember the ancestors sent him there. Nobody showed up. When he was just starting his career, he said he had a meeting at the car park. But what have they offered to the people of that community, development-wise? Nothing in the 5 years. No house lot, nothing. But they took all the prime lands for themselves, and I can list them again. I'm not going to go through that today. Who got all of the prime lands there? We had to buy land back now to develop the house lots for the people in Linden. They didn't do anything much there. Not a thing. Now we're building a new 4-lane bridge across the river. They're opposed to us removing the tariff from the people in Linden, although we said we'll meet with the town council to assist them. They're opposed to that. That's how they treat the Lindeners on everything else except when to stir up protests and to instigate young people. That they're always victims. They want young people to feel, particularly young Afro-Guyanese, to feel they're victims all the time. So nothing. It was convenient for them to go up. You think they care too much? And I don't know where Norton is now. He's expressing all of these things from abroad. And so look at the Quindon Bacchus case. When the police shot Quindon Bacchus, they said the same thing. Nothing will happen. That policeman is now charged and facing the courts. And when the family sued the government and they got a judgment of $24 million and they were going to appeal it, we decided to discontinue the appeal so the family can collect the $24 million on the Quindon Bacchus case. You think APNU would have done that? So I've seen them conveniently that the PPP divide and rule strategy, that is what he said about Linden. We created this incident to divide and rule the people of the country. The only group that promotes division, that wants division, is the PNC and the AFC. They want division. The two groups want division. That's the only two groups that want division. I just want to end by, since Marcel is here and we miss her a lot, talk about the Starbuck News a bit. So I saw an editorial, No Cultural Policy, saying that the government of Guyana does not have a cultural policy and we are poorer for it. It's not entirely true. It's a well-written editorial, but it's not entirely true. But I want Starbuck News and the others to do some introspection, the same group that they appeal to. That to do some introspection on creating this national consciousness that they're talking about, that could, if we create the national consciousness, they call it nationalism here. I would prefer national consciousness that can help to unify us and make us stronger. But every day it seems as though some people are working to create this national consciousness and to bring people together. And there are others who are trying to break that asunder. They don't want it to happen. And who are the perpetrators? It's better to call out the perpetrators. If you're so interested in this, the creation of the national consciousness that could unify us, maybe through a cultural policy or any other policy, then you should be in the forefront of fighting for it. But look at the good things. And so a lot of it, they mention in the editorial, it's about promoting the things that make us feel good about being Guyanese and about being together. And so take, for example, the changes in the Amerindian communities. Under the PPP, you see a visible change. And I'm not going to even criticize the PNC today. Forget all about APNU and AFC. So we worked on an initiative to sell 750 million, 30% of our forest carbon for $750 million. We decided that 15% will go to our indigenous people, and so far, in 2 years, they received $10 billion, 242 communities. They've done on their own over 1,500 projects in their communities. If you had given it to a UNDP to intermediate the funds, you'll get 5 projects in 10 years. But they did it through their own management at every village level with proper structures. They identified the projects, had community buy-in. They spent the money, they accounted for the money. It's a great capacity building at the local level, and the projects are benefiting the people there. This is a good story. Every one of the 242 Tushaus and senior councillors or head of CDCs who came to the NTC conference, they loved the initiative, they want it. They all publicly expressed it, even the one who supported the APA. Have you ever seen the Starbuck News give a positive review of this? When we had the conference there, not a single, the other Tushau, they pick one Tushau from the APA And you would think that his voice was the voice of the 241 others, because he was griping all of Jagdeo is too harsh, somebody is saying something, etc. Gripe about it, not the positive feel good. Oh, our indigenous people they're getting some assistance from LCDS funds, and look what great things they've done with the money through their own management. Then look how many stories are given to APA when APA tries to kill the initiative globally by distortion, that they are reporting they're speaking for the Amerindian people, not the 242 elected leaders. How can you build a feel-good thing about positive things about ourselves? Look at our law, the Amerindian Act, one of the unique acts anywhere in the world. It's unique in fact, more 99% of the countries with indigenous people don't have anything coming close to that. Look at our constitution. We have an Indigenous Peoples Commission. Look at the what's happening in so many of these areas. No, you can't. It's unmatched. Look at land. Which country has moved from 6% of the country to now nearly 15% of the country through title lands to indigenous people? Where in the world? But you would never see that from the APA or the Stabroek News about this great story, because you know why? Because it happened primarily under the People's Progressive Party. Why? So how do you build national consciousness when you use one unaccountable organization that got 20 million US in 10 years and spent it on themselves, not on the indigenous people, by paying high salaries and holding conferences? But we want a great national consciousness and feel good to promote, unity. But you then, the naysayers, you put. We are one of the countries where we have a free media. You check around the world where journalists are being killed, all sorts of things happening to them. But you would never see that. You would think that this is the worst country in the world with press freedom. Because, again, the GPA, which is anti-PPP, gets dominance in the Stabroek News all the time. The same organization that speaks about national consciousness and promoting unity would just focus on that. It's a lie. They perpetrate a lie, and once again, it's because of their anti-PPP. And then look at the GHRA. Look at the human rights record. Our human rights record can stand up to any country in the world. Any country in the world. But you would think here we have egregious violation of human rights. You look at our law, the constitution of this country, the ERC, where in any country in this hemisphere or anywhere in the world that you have a constitutional body that has the powers of sanction over the executive, can prevent a political party from running at an election if they use race or people's gender, etc., as a divisive campaign tool. Very few countries in the world have 5 rights commission built into their constitution where you have to have 2/3 support to sit on one of those commissions. Look at nowhere. You don't hear about that. Oh, you would hear McCormack, a one-man organization. You would think he speaks for Ghana if you read the Stabroek News. So how come how can we build national consciousness when a Catiyus on a critical matter like the border would lie on me, a former president, saying I betrayed the country by trying to give Venezuela a route to the Atlantic by giving up our thing. And it's widely reported. No condemnation of it. How do you build pride and a cultural policy and national unity when you try to tear down every day all the positives about our country by giving out, I'm not saying don't give, it's your editorial policy, but outlandish, outsized space to the naysayers, the people who are negative about our country. They get the bulk of it in your newspapers. You don't ever promote the national thing. What about cost of living? Cost of living has ravaged the rest of the world. Every day, Starbuck News doing a series going around, what is the government doing on cost of living? When we explain, compare, if you want to build cultural pride and national consciousness, you should take the developed countries, take countries in the Caribbean, and compare what our governments have done to tackle cost of living. Where do you see? Every day we're doing it on the education sector. We just took out another expense that parents would have. We're doing it through multiple means, through higher disposable income, by absorbing expenses that parents have to pay, but by giving up $80 billion of taxes on the 50% excise tax on fuel. Every Guyanese, that had led to stable transportation prices and stable cost of input. Where does that get mentioned? Or the subsidizing of the electricity rate to keep them at 2020 levels in spite of the increase in cost of living. Or the removal of the taxes on data that has led to a cheapening of data, or the lowering of the price of water by 5% since we got into office. All of these are components of cost of living. Or the housing program, the mortgage rates coming down, the facility to give people free steel and cement to offset some costs. You ever hear about national pride? You compare us with other countries. They could have said, in Guyana, we are trying to tackle this. This is how our government has done it. We kept the old rate to calculate the taxes on. So the old freight rate, when freight rates escalated up 500%, we use the old freight rate to calculate our taxes. And since the taxes are ad valorem, your percentage of that ensure that people didn't have to pay for higher taxes. Which country has done that? Every week they go. What about Bora prices? They went to Jawala. Yes, of course, the price, because you have to fly things into Jawala. But the airline, look how many more aircrafts you have. We've built more airstrips. We have removed the tax that APNU put on freight and travel into the hinterland. There was a VAT on that. We removed it. Just imagine with APNU VAT and these prices, how much more expensive it would have been there. Look at what we did in Region 1. We removed the taxes back that they were levying at Port Kaituma and Mabaruma. So how are we building this pride and stuff when you tear down everything? You go and make it look like, oh, it's rosier over there. It's not true. The things that we do here in Guyana that we should have pride in because we're tackling problems. Which country in the world or in this region has so aggressively tackled housing development? Housing development. You don't even take pride in that. So I love these editorials. I love them, no cultural policy and the building of nationalism, but this is not a government thing. It is about every day we work to bring people together. They try to destroy. And the primary culprit, well, not the primary, I think Kiteshore is more primary than Starbrook. Kiteshore just focuses on law. So it's just destruction all the time. Never accentuating the positive things about our country that people feel when they get a plot of land and move into a house for the first time or find a job or something of that sort. Every day it's about some gripe. Norton said, oh, we need a holistic policy. Holistic policy, I don't know what that means. And they get all of the publicity for that. I'm going to end here. Thank you. So yes.
Mr. Jagdeo, Dennis Shabral,
Can someone lend me a pen, please? Yeah.
Demerara Waves.
So I can make notes before I answer. Yeah. Like, I just need to jot down the questions because normally when Dennis asks, you got about 10 questions.
12.
12 today? Okay, all right. So, yeah.
Mr. Jagdeo, first of all, how much US dollars worth of goods on an average basis are being purchased by Trinidad businesses through Guyana? And secondly, what mechanism will be used for Guyanese to invest in the fertilizer, oil, and other company businesses that you refer to? And thirdly, what is the reason for today's long, prolonged, erratic blackouts?
Oh. Well, I was upset with them because they have power in their system, so let me deal with the blackout too. So I called before I came into this press conference, and they told me that they had a problem at the Kingston substation and some issue with the battery there. So it was a specific problem. It has nothing to do with the availability of power because we have enough power generating in the system, but they develop a problem at Kingston today. But this is part of, as I said to you before, until we have a modern grid with redundancies, well, we're building out now, we're not going to be able to stop these intermittent blackouts. And that's what we are focused on heavily, on modernizing the grid. I don't want to go down that route now, but like last week you saw just another element. It's nearly $500 million worth of projects to transmit power to a different part of the country. And then also a big set, maybe nearly $200 million being awarded to just replace and replace transformers, put in new transformers. Some of the lines are already brittle, the distribution means are brittle, worn. The connections are bad between. So they lead to a lot of instability. That's massive work that's been undertaken now. None of this was undertaken under the 5 years of APNU. And so but this is not just APNU, it's an old transmission system. They didn't tackle generation, and we had to move swiftly on generation. But this is something that we have to look at. And redundancy is an important thing. If you're using one line to transmit, and then something goes wrong, because it's not a circuit, you can't route the power through another way to get to the beneficiaries. It comes down one line here, the line, anything goes wrong with the line, a vehicle like last week, their car crashed into the transmission pole, then the system goes down because the car crashed into the pole. Look how many of that we've had. So that is the one. I called before I came into the press conference, so I was upset with them because I thought that we're going back to the past.
It's a problem?
Yes, Kingston. They told me it's a problem they developed at Kingston with that substation, something to do with the battery. But you can get more about it later.
Oh, they're not answering. They're not answering any questions.
They don't.
No.
Well, then they should put out. We've said 100 times. Look, listen. We met with some people who have greater reach on social media. And so we've been talking a lot about how do we use social media, and we pay people who have a greater presence on social media. They can monetize their presence, but also their reach by government utilizing their services to carry more messages of a public service nature, not political. We don't need the political messages of a public service nature to people. Just last week, I spoke to Dr. Anthony about the use of social media and influencers or the online media to talk about the cervical cancer program. You know how many people don't know about the program. And then also the spectacles program for the children and people over 50, that they can get it for free. And you would assume that people know. And these are people like who are reading the newspaper. Well, I assume they're reading newspapers or reading something, but they don't know. And it's only by using this. So GPL should keep people informed through social media. They should be sending out this information and also pay people in the social media to carry their messages. They're doing it on the traditional media, and nobody looks at traditional media anymore. Nobody looks at traditional media. People just on their phone all day long. They don't have time to go and look at a TV station or something like that. They're going to put out a notice and scroll it on some TV station, and they think they've done their job. So sometimes it's inept management in these agencies. They already have the policy direction and approval from the government. Please do so. But they just sit on their hands. They just treat these things like routine. They fall asleep at their offices and all sorts of things. But it's not for lack of direction. Like they should be out there immediately explaining what the problem is to people. Just put out a notice, put it on your page, the GPL page, send a message to all the media houses. Have your paid people who are influencers, but not in the political area, Because if you put it on a credible source, nobody would believe you there. That's and not a credible source. But you got to put it in other places. And I think you're right about this matter. The mechanism for the opportunities I'm speaking about, like in this case you mentioned the fertilizer plant and the LPG project. So a couple of weeks ago, I explained that it could take various forms. We could issue a bond. And have people subscribe to the bond at a guaranteed coupon rate or interest rate, so that they get the state, which would be significantly higher than what they get from putting their money in the bank, that is the deposit rate. So that could be one mechanism. We could then limit who can invest, the size of the investment to get more people to invest, or alternately just allow the bond if it's a large project. Well, let me deal with this one first. So the fertilizer opportunities so it could be in the form of a bond or shares, ownership of shares in the company. So put in a share structure that allows people to buy shares, but put a cap on how many shares they can own, so you have wider participation. We know it's going to be a profitable venture, but it would encourage more people to participate if the government were to underwrite the return, to say every year at a minimum you're going to get this level of return. When it falls, so you get the dividend policy will be based on profits, so you can get 20% return for a year, but it will not fall below 10%. And this is particularly for small people, for small investors like the farmers, the teachers, the public servants, the bauxite, the miner, the small miner who want to invest there, anyone. So that could be the vehicle. Then for the larger projects, where Guyanese who have more money, they're maybe a wealthier class of people, and they want to, then bonds. Bonds may be for other types of projects. So they can invest in, they get a guaranteed access to the bond at a higher rate, and the money is used to develop some public sector project. But then you can either have unlimited investments in those bonds, or maybe you cap it too for other projects. So those, in a nutshell, I'm just giving you a couple of examples. But we want to take the most lucrative opportunities and then allow widespread participation. The third one was, oh, okay. The banks could not have estimated it, but we warned against it.
But how can it not be estimated
No,
when you
but
might be
this,
seeing
they
the
assured
outflows?
us. They assured us because people could, some of their resources can go through third parties. So they get a third party to make payment on their behalf. A third party to make a seemingly legitimate source in Guyana. But they're paying for goods to go to Trinidad.
Suggesting Guyanese businesses are complicit?
There may be a few. And so I was assured, we went through this issue, I was assured that the $100 million of demand that accumulated in the system, that they're all for local institutions. But when I say local, it doesn't mean only Guyanese. Those foreign companies that are operating here, they have a right to get their currency and trade freely in their currency. So it's not just Guyanese. So if you have a Trinidadian company like Massey here that's operating in Guyana, they should be able to access our banking system and the markets too. So it's not a thing based on nationality. It's just legitimate demand for activities in Guyana.
Good afternoon, Mr. Jagdeo. Milton Granum for Starbuck News.
Yes.
We know the reciprocal tariffs were reduced, were paused, and a 10% is now across the board. But does the government definitively know which goods specifically and which companies here in Guyana are affected by these tariffs?
So I asked the Minister of Finance to convene a meeting with all of the exporters who may be affected by the tariff tomorrow. So we'll be meeting with them tomorrow. But we know which are the sectors. As I explained earlier, in the White House order that announced the reciprocal tariff that President Trump signed, gave a list of goods that are exempted. And so from our top 10 exports, the top 3 by far, not the top 3, the ones that come in 1, 2, and 4, those are exempt from the reciprocal tariff. So, and that's the bulk of our exports into the United States of America, because it's the oil, it's the bauxite ore, and gold exports. The rest of the exports, smaller magnitude, but very impactful on people's lives, because it's in mainly agricultural exports, and larger numbers of people rely on agriculture for employment opportunities. So that's why we're meeting with those groups to see how they're affected. Yes, it's fish exports, shrimp exports, they're processed agricultural goods, and also fresh produce. No, yes, but that's what the Minister of Finance has arranged for the companies to meet with us tomorrow. So we want to learn all about this even before we, to see if there's anything we can do, because it's one thing to talk about a reciprocal tariff, but there is a 10% tariff now in place. The good thing is that it's for every country, so it doesn't change the comparative advantage of a country because of the tariff. It just because it's levied across the imports from every country. So if they're shipping bananas into the US from, say, Dominica or Dominican Republic, and we ship bananas into the US, they would be levied at the same 10% now. So it doesn't shift that dynamic.
Marcel Thomas from the
Marcel?
I'm following up on the forex injected into the commercial banks.
Yeah.
Last week it was 100 million. Today we've checked the local banks to see if they're giving currency to locals. Most of the banks are saying that they don't have money. I want to know what systems has government put in place to monitor the checks and balances of where this money is going?
Yeah, but and then I just spoke with the bankers because Monday, whether they actually received the money from the central bank, and they said to me yesterday they received it, so that it was sold to them. So they're telling me they're working at clearing off their entire list, and they have a list. So they have a list that the central bank could verify. So I don't, maybe it's a timing issue, but for us, we're very comfortable that the system is clearing. And as I said before, we're going to manage this carefully to ensure that we don't have any appreciation of the currency too. We don't want that to happen. And it's no secret that we've explained this 100 times. We don't want the currency. People say, why don't you allow the currency to come 200 to 1 and stuff like that? It would kill certain sectors, the same Dutch disease. So maybe it's a timing you call, or they think you identify yourself as a reporter?
No,
oh, okay.
I can't identify myself as a reporter.
Okay. Call and say, I want some money.
And it's not even much. I'm asking for 500.
No, but Marcel, this is something I've complained about. And that is one of the reasons why we're very reluctant sometimes to, in a knee-jerk way, to enter the market. Because the market might be clearing in its aggregate, but different institutions may have one institution, a bank may have a surplus and another a deficit of foreign currency. They don't trade, they don't lend each other, they don't interface with each other because they save currency to poach on each other's business. So you have to set up your account with them if you want foreign currency from them. That is how it works. So they are so they may want you to set up an account there. They will not sell you if you walk off the street just like that.
We gave them account information. We called, but it's with account information for persons.
Yeah, but Marcel, they assure me that it's clearing. And that's it, because I saw the list of demand and we went through. Yes, the central bank monitors this. And so we can't see the same demand surfacing, but it's a recurrent thing. I don't want to make it seem as though it's a one-off thing. This is a recurrent thing. This country is the economy has grown now to 20-something billion dollars, up from a few $100 million. So the demand for currency, what you see is the delta. You see the delta all the time, where it's not clearing, but you don't see the vast volume of transactions that take place every day. Massive volumes of transactions take place. So when I see 100 million surfacing, it's not a major deal because it's on a market that runs into billions of dollars every day for legitimate purposes in a big economy, a relatively big economy.
Final Manakshan again.
Yes,
Good
sure.
afternoon. In light of the recent incidents in Linden, is government going to push for police reforms as it relates to their operating procedures on de-escalating situations or tensions with the public. You mentioned the Quinton Bacchus situation too. How are officers going to act when in these situations?
Yeah, but in that case, how do you, if it's a personal thing as in the Bacchus case, how do you train people not to get personal with someone? You know, that is it. It's rogue action in that case. It was rogue action by a policeman who is now charged and before the court. You can't predict rogue action, and you can't. How do you train against it? The training is solid. You can't just shoot people just like that. But that case, that is illustrative of personal, personal issue causing the shooting there on the East Coast.
Dr. Jagdeo, a top gold target export, gold target export, a top trader, which was the leading exporter in 2022, is claiming they're shutting down operations due to delays in the renewal of their license.
Who?
Gold target export.
I don't know.
I believe their office is on Church Street or
I
something.
don't know these companies. Contrary to the belief that I know of these people, I don't know who this is.
Aware of what might be the
I know
behind the
that
scenes.
there are quite a bit of, as I said before, of recent, we have recognized that people are paying nearly $200 above what the gold board would be paying for an ounce of gold. And that's largely because they're evading the taxes. And that we have information that this gold is being exported to Brazil. I told you here about targeted operations that one person was caught and charged with gold export and money laundering, or who was caught on the way to Brazil with money and gold. I know that there are several operations that target the people who are buying this gold illegally, do not have a permit here. I know that some people may be implicated in it, some local companies too, but I don't know of this particular case because I've not seen it in the public domain. So it could very well be that they've lost their license for a reason. And we can find out a little bit later and get back in touch with you. Yeah.
Good afternoon, Dr. Jagdeo, and Ask Williams, Skytree News. Sir, can you say which of the non-oil sectors are we currently investing in so that we can be able to be dependent on to service our debt and keep the economy afloat post-oil?
The non-oil sectors. I dealt with this a couple of weeks ago from when your colleague was here. It is, so we identify, let me go back quickly again. I don't want to be very long on this because I spent a lot of time. So we have identified several new growth poles, right? And we have identified these as creating the wealth of the future. So one of the growth poles would be agriculture, expansion of agriculture, major and agro industry. And that is why you've seen a lot of investments in terms of policy, infrastructure, co-investment to expand this sector. We believe we have great advantages in this area because we have a lot of freshwater resources. The world is water stressed. 80% of the world is water stressed. And also we have a lot of arable land. Two key ingredients for massive agricultural exports. And that's why a big focus of the government is food security, not only for Guyana, but for the wider region. So that's one big area. The second area is hospitality industry and ecotourism. We believe with the 12 new hotels here and with promotion of ecotourism, now we are looking to expand that this could create a massive, sustainable flow of revenue to the treasury, and also create income for private people and job opportunities for them. So that plus the green sector. We believe that outside of the oil and gas sector, that we can use some of the gas to industrialize the country, particularly using some of our minerals like the bauxite, etc., to move to higher forms of value added. The ICT sector is a major area for not just to make the economy more productive, but also to ensure that we can export this as a service. So these are like just a few of the areas that, these are just a few of the areas that we're working in, the other sectors of the economy.
Good afternoon. Shabani Ramprasad, Ignite News. Dr. Jagdeo, with regards to the e-ticketing system, there has been some questions from the public, and I just want to know if it has been given any thoughts. Firstly, a lot of persons have been asking for the speed limits to be increased, especially in the areas where it's like 50 kilometers per hour and so on. Has this been something that has been given any kind of consideration?
I think if you're going to put in place the cameras, then you have to, some of the speed limits from what I've seen are unusually low. So you have to, the specialists have to look at this, not the politicians. We have to get specialists and let them advise us. So you don't want to err in any manner, right? You don't want to go overboard in any direction. So speed limits that are safe, but also that are not, don't become so cumbersome that everyone will get charged because they are so unusually low that on a highway. Yes, it's something that we should examine,
Okay, and the second question regarding that is the verification process. Persons are asking on social media and so on, like for example, if they own vehicles and it's being rented or it's being worked in the hire car or hire bus industry, what happens in that case when they receive a ticket because it goes to the owner, the person that is registered to? How do they verify those processes as to say who actually was driving the vehicles?
How you verify? I don't know who was driving the bus. So it goes to the owner. But then the owner needs to know who's driving his bus. Wouldn't the owner know who is driving the bus? If you have a bus and you don't know who is driving your bus, you're in a bad shape, right?
I'm guessing it might be in situations where it's rented to multiple people or somebody is utilizing the vehicles, but then they have different drivers and so on using them at that time.
Yes, okay. I guess, let me find out from the police. I don't know how they would verify the owner, how to identify who was driving the bus at the time. It's something that I have to find out. I don't really.
Anybody else?
Yes.
Dr. Jagdeo, can you give us an update on the gas to energy arbitration process? Can you say where government is with that? And the RFP for phase 2, there have been several extensions to the deadline. Is it because there are no proposals being submitted?
No, actually not. We have a lot of interest in this project. In fact, more interest that we're getting unsolicited offers all the time, but they have to come through that process. We're being very almost cautious now as we're approaching the elections to really undertake a major initiative of that nature before the elections. So we're being more cautious now about this project. But it's not for want of interest. And then we still have to verify some parameters of the project. So we want a well-designed project. So we're verifying that. But it's more a sign of the caution that we are exercising now than a lack of interest in the project. We have a phenomenal amount of interest in this project. And just people just coming all the time, every day, sending in proposals to us, and we're saying, no, hold on, it has to go through a proper process, etc. Okay.
Arbitration process.
Oh, the arbitration, yeah, well, that's before, as I said before, I can't speak much about that, but the project is going on whilst we're at arbitration. Well, the arbitration is dealing with a lot of those claims. Right, yeah. I don't want to get into detail. I told you already with the press release that came out from the ministry about the DAR process that we are bound to hold it confidential and the arbitration. But I can assure you, as I said then, that we are not, because we want this project to be completed in time before the elections, or we wanted it to be completed, that we are going to compromise the interests of the people of this country. That's why we're fully going to go to arbitration and make all of our cases, even if it delays the project a bit. We are protecting national interest first. That's the first thing. And in any case, we have plans to address. We just contracted the power barges for 2 years. So we will have power in the system.
Dr. Jagdeo Cordell Jones from Livewire News. Azruddin Mohammed has made a claim that you and the Attorney General are targeting him and his family. Could you give us a response to that? And also, following up on my colleague's question about the gold dealership, do you think there's a possibility that some of these dealers may be buying gold on behalf of probably the Mohammeds or other individuals who might want to export said gold?
So, Anil Nandalal dealt with that matter directly. So every week the Mohammeds claim that we're focused on them on the press at my press conference, which is not true. It did not happen until they came after the PPP. I had for a long time said I defended their right to go around the country, to take pictures with whomever they want, post their pictures. I defended right here their right to do that because we knew they were criticizing the PPP underground, but they had not formally done so. I said, if you come after the PPP, we'll respond. But I've noticed quite a bit in the public domain, and I think it's a smokescreen. All that you're seeing there is a smokescreen for the Mohammeds not to answer two questions. One, did you smuggle over 10,000 kilograms of gold between 2019 and 2024? the United States of America sanction you, they supply information that you smuggled 10,000 kilograms of gold through the United States of America in this period. They claim that you have over $11 billion of taxes that you evaded. The Mohammeds talk about everything under the sun, but they never would talk about that issue. Nothing, not all their influencers who they're paying and the trolls that they've hired and everyone else and some mainstream media like News Source and all of them. They don't address that one issue. The single issue that led to the sanction by the United States against the Mohammeds. The US ambassador said, we have a mountain of evidence. They're not addressing that issue, and that's only for the period between 2019 to 2024. Will they answer that question? Everything else is a smokescreen. Oh, we're being victimized, we're treated badly, it's all kinds of Jagdeo's vindictiveness, but would not answer that question, which is the key question as to why they were sanctioned. Secondly, they would not answer the question on the vehicles. Now, they claim in this case, after the vehicles, GRA attempted to seize the vehicles, after the GRA had given them almost 3 weeks, first of all, 14 days to explain why he declared the Lamborghini at $75,000, that's the acquisition cost, but he said publicly that he paid $1 million for it. He published that he paid $98.6 million for 3 vehicles. He published his own TIN number. He published the receipts of the payment on Team Mohammed's page. So nobody, GRA didn't release his information. He released the information. And that's why I'm saying this guy is extremely stupid. Stupid. And his father will not deal with that. He makes it a conspiracy against them, etc. But it was his son who, in the public domain, that unsolicitedly, because somebody said, oh, you don't pay taxes, he went and put how much he paid, and he put all of his receipts, the TIN number, etc. The GRA 2 days later, they didn't get a call from Jagdeo who said, is that all you paid? Well, here is the new assessment. He released it. And we have a voluntary compliance system. And the GRA can do post audits anytime. In fact, how many other people are not faced with that? I know an importer that imported vehicles a couple of years ago and has to pay now over $300 million in taxes because they underdeclared. The GRA found out 2 years later that they underdeclared. So it was his stupidity that triggered that, not because the father is a real notorious liar. He said, Nandalal and I met and told him that if his son runs, we want a statement, or else we'll send GRA to collect the taxes. Why he didn't say that at the beginning? Only the day that the GRA went to seize the vehicle. But coming back to the question, forget all of that. That's side issue. Did you buy a Lamborghini for $75,000? And then why did you say publicly, in an act of stupidity, you told a man you paid $1 million for it? If you cheat the GRA, they have the right 7 years after, if they discover new information, to come after you for taxes. But they believe that there was one law for the other people in this country and another law for them. because maybe that's how they behaved in the past. So the GRA put out a release that they have irrefutable evidence, and they do have irrefutable evidence, and it will be presented in court. And secondly, that so irrefutable evidence showing that there was evasion here. So I don't know where this is coming from about this vindictiveness, etc. I know why. The second thing is some of the vehicles there were imported by other family members under very strict rules that you have to spend a minimum of 183 days in the country to qualify for it as a remigrant. They did not. So the GRA put out the release recently to say, we have seized vehicles from about 300 other people, public servants because they're bridges, poor people, etc. What's so special about the Mohammeds? They've done that after they find that people cheated on the remigrant scheme. They went and seized their vehicles. So we must go after poor people and seize their vehicles, the GRA. But because they're special, they must not get their vehicles seized. When they cheated, they lied, they breached all of the laws. So I hope that when we get the information, well, they may have gotten it already from the US about how much money was actually transferred to pay for the vehicle, that's money laundering in the US too. Because if you claim $75,000 here to the GRA but remit $1 million, then that's serious. That's wire fraud, money laundering, a whole range of stuff. So this is the Mohammeds have claimed this all the time. They're trying to be victims.
Dr. Jagdeo, Mikhail Rodriguez for Daybreak News. Recently on the sidelines of an event, while addressing questions from Demerara Waves, Dennis Chabral, the president, spoke about information that was sent in relation to Fagundes murder, known as paper shorts, to the FBI, and then that had come back. What was the information received back from the FBI, and why has the government of Guyana or the Guyana Police Force not acted on that information to date?
Okay, so I think the president made it clear, because I think he was pointing out the duplicity of the opposition and many media people. So at one stage, the entire PNC was arguing that the Mohammeds are protected by the PPP, and President Ali, and we are covering up all of their illegal acts. This came from the same Gordon Mosley and the Travis Chase and all of the others, the extremists who reside in New York, as well as from mainstream PNC and AFC. So let me take you back to 2022. On August 19, as I was coming here, because they make it look like it's a recent thing that we have spoken about the Mohammeds. So you would recall, at that time, Bascom had accused the Mohammeds of being involved in the killing of paper shorts. And they said that they were going to sue Bascom. And then at the convention center, I think it was Dennis Chabrol, and many others were pressing me on this issue. August 19, 2022, 2 years before the Mohammeds were sanctioned. Now, there are two stories about this matter that I could find. I'm sure it's in all the papers. Kaichor News, quoting me as saying, PPPC will not allow businessmen involved in illegal activities to tarnish its reputation, Jagdeo. This was in August 20th, 2022, after my press conference, August 19th. Since then, the standard said PPP will not cover for businessmen or anyone who commits wrongdoing, Jagdeo. So, I'm going to read just maybe the part where it starts from. You can read the story yourself. The VP also registered his consternation with the government getting caught in the crosshairs of a matter that could potentially expose high levels of corruption involving top law enforcement officials and powerful businessmen. He is opined that it may be time to review the protocols that foster unwanted coziness between cops and businessmen. Let me explain this. At that time, I said, the people who were buying gold and transporting gold were using the TSU to guard their gold and to transport it. And I said that when they pay the TSU for this service to transport their gold or to protect the gold being transported, this happened on the Apnu throughout everybody. They develop a kind of coziness and a link between the policemen and these businessmen. And it's time that we think about discontinuing this. If you need state protection to move gold, then you should do it from a specialized unit, not necessarily the TSU. So I spoke of that at that time, and I said, it says, but Jagdeo, during a press conference today, said otherwise. The VP said Tamish Jagmohan, Azruddin Mohammed, and Roger Khan. Roger Khan was abroad, and the two others were busy making money under the PNC. Their concerns do not preoccupy me at night. The concerns of ordinary people and the people who looked at us in the faces in our re-election campaign, people of every race, every walk of life, are the ones who drive us to work hard. The PPP will not condone any act on the part of any of those individuals I mentioned or others. People will have to face consequences for their actions, whatever their actions are. And that is where we stand. And I said, they were not the ones going out to look for votes when we were campaigning. This is all 2 years before the sanction. I mentioned the names because they were trying to drag us into a matter that the PPP had no involvement with, or the government. Private matters between these parties. And I mentioned, Kaichor News said itself, one of the names he publicly mentioned was Azruddin Mohammed. It was written by Sherwin Graves. I don't see him here today. Since then, I spoke of Azruddin Mohammed and not dragging the PPP into protection of any illegalities they may be committed. This is a full 2 years before the sanction. So for those people who think, oh, this is something that the PPP is vindictive about. Now, let me tell you what the PNC said at that time. The People's National Congress, the largest party within the main opposition, well, it goes on, has labeled Mohammed's enterprise as cronies of the government, predicting that justice will not be served. A release from the office of the leader of the opposition earlier this week said The criminal PPP state must defend its cronies against whom these allegations are made. The PPP will go to any length to protect its criminal cabal. So they were saying the Mohammeds were criminal cabal and that the PPP will protect this criminal cabal. Look how the tables have turned now. They're working closely with the Mohammeds. Meetings, all of the trolls. If you look at the trolls and the entire anti-PPP media, they have now descended in favor of the Mohammeds. I don't know if they're getting paid or not. But if you go to any story now, and you should look at it, if you go to any story about the Mohammeds, you see the PNC members weighing in there with positive comments about them, and they have a series of trolls. If you click on them, the trolls, you would see, or the accounts, you will see they were set up a couple of weeks ago to create this impression of widespread support for him. And they are supported by the PNC. Look at the figures there. It's the same Odessa Primus, who is, I gather, related to Simona Brooms, and a whole range of other groups. Gordon Mosley now, Travis Chase. Look at the Travis Chase's story. PPP official caught in New York, questioned in New York. So we were wondering which PPP official got questioned recently. It's Roshan Khan, who is not a member of the party, but PPP, that was his headline, PPP official, because the bosses, the people who pay him, said, put that up. And guess what he was questioned about? The Mohammeds. Now, he was questioned even after their meeting with the prosecutor. He was questioned about the Mohammeds. But already it went out, PPP officials. And that brings me to what the father has been saying all around the place. He's been saying, oh, he knows it's PPP officials who have been sanctioned and who lost their visas. It has nothing to do with them. He even called an imam who lost his visa pervert in one of the lives. So, if one thing is common in all of the people who lost their visas or who've been questioned going into the US, is the Mohammeds. Any association with them causes people to be questioned or either receive the sanction in the form of losing visas. There are scores of people who are ashamed to say it. They will not come forward. And that's the common thing there. Everyone is questioned about their association with the Mohammeds. So, this is something like last week. I see they have a way with the trolls to shift things. So my friends from Barbados called me and said, did you criticize Barbados? Now, actually, it's a funny story. And they knew that Azruddin Mohammed was not traveling abroad because of fear that he may be arrested. And therefore, he had to go. They told people he was going to meet the US prosecutors in Barbados. So he didn't go there on a vacation. Maybe they gave him an assurance that he would not be arrested. So he went to the beach and they posed the team Mohammed. Oh, God bless Mohammed, look where he is. So I was thinking, you know, to go to Barbados, you don't need a visa. Barbados is like home. It's like going to Lethem. Now, I know Barbados well. I've had close personal relation, and great relationship with the people of Barbados, but more so with the leaders. The same Owen Otter who headed the Commonwealth team that found these guys trying to steal the elections. Remember, they tried to chase him out of the building there? It's Bajan, and a really great Bajan too. Mia Motley is a fantastic person. So Barbados is a beautiful country. But I wasn't criticizing Barbados. The point I was making is you have to go to Barbados and basically palaver, and if there's a word like that, about that. Barbados is like home. It's like traveling to Lethem. You don't need a visa. That's the point I was making. I was mocking this fool, not saying anything about Barbados. So they quickly made it about Barbados because they wanted to distract from what I was really saying. And that's why I said, go to Manhattan then. And take a picture on not the beach, somewhere else. So all week they were at it. Oh, Jagdeo criticized Barbados. It's not Barbados. And so my friends in Barbados, they knew otherwise. They knew I wouldn't do that. But these clowns have a way of diverting attention from the real issue. And the real issue is that people are losing their visas in droves by being connected with them. People are being questioned when they go into the U.S. The U.S. government said you can face an enforcement action if you're associated with them. They smuggle with their large quantities of gold and now trying to be the victim. Oh, billions of dollars in taxes, don't want to pay it. They just under-declare taxes on the vehicle and making it look like it's they're victims now when the GRA is coming after them. These are all issues that we'll continue to engage. And is it because the PPP is afraid of the Mohammeds? And he is no electoral challenge to us. What is he going to? He hasn't offered anything except trying to share out a bit of the money that he owes in taxes, and just misleading poor people. And by the way, GRA should not really GRA. If I were GRA, I'd say I'm coming in the morning, and don't go, and let him mobilize all the time and hire the people and give them some employment that he hired in his yard. And then I'll say I'm going the next day, and don't go too. And then let the people get more employment there. Whole week I would have been giving employment opportunities to people. It's funny. It's funny that these guys try to make you evade your taxes. You get caught because of your own stupidity, and you're saying, oh, it's a victim, as though the law must not apply to you. And all day long, they're at this. And the trolls, look at the trolls, controlled by the PNC and AFC. They're there every day criticizing everyone. Self-righteous. This is a criminal enterprise that APNU said it's a criminal cabal. APNU said the Mohammeds was a criminal cabal. Today, they're consorting with the criminal cabal. Consorting with the criminal cabal. So, yes.
Dr. Jagdeo, the Guyana Revenue Authority has an enforcement unit. Over the years, the Guyana Revenue Authority has seized many vehicles from people from all walks of life. You said it yourself, government officials. They have also equipped to seize contraband from heavily armed, I've known over the years, heavily armed pirates. Do you still have trust in the Guyana Revenue Authority in light of their actions recently, obviously informing Azadeen Mohammed that they were coming, and then acting like they're incapable of executing on seizing the vehicles?
No, the Mohammeds live in a country that is free and respectful of laws. And they have a government that would allow people due process. He would not have even made a tiny sound, a squeak, if the APNU was in power. As I said before, he'd be doing a bucket load of something if APNU were in power. They recognize that the PPP acts lawfully. So he had 14 days to give a credible answer. He did not do so. 7 days, they gave him notice to bring in the vehicle. He didn't. Then they went to seize as per law, and he opposed this. And he went to the court and got an injunction. So they live in a country where a sanctioned individual by the US can still go to the court here and get an injunction and have the government respect it, the injunction. We respect the injunction, but we hope that when the facts are presented, because then you would see that you can't treat people, poor people as you said, differently. People who would have seized from before, vehicles who have evaded far less taxes than the Mohammeds and not, in his case, apply the same law. So I don't know, I don't want to compromise, say that the GRA officers were compromised or anything like that. I just want to say that they respect the court decision. We respected the court. The court said, gave an injunction. We said, oh, fine, we'll present the evidence we have. And the GRA said, they have compelling evidence. So it's just a matter for the court.
Given all that's been happening and all that you have said, would you deny, or can I ask you if there's some kind, first let me say what is happening. The government and the Guyana Police Force, the Guyana Revenue Authority have not been able to execute in any way, shape or form against the Mohammeds. The Mohammeds has been able to leverage their ill-gotten gains and are now maneuvering opposition supporters. A lot of legal pundits.
But your contention is wrong, because it is because we have complied with the spirit and the letter of the sanction that they are upset with the PPP, because somehow they feel that the PPP must protect them and all of their businesses in spite of the sanctions, and put at risk the lives and the future of the people of this country. And
Dr. Jagdeo,
no, you'll get a chance to
game, because they're seeing how the Mohammeds are maneuvering opposition supporters. So people are suggesting this is all a game. Some people are suggesting this is all a game, and somehow the Mohammeds are being used by the PPP to disillusion opposition supporters.
Well, their entire vitriol is against the People's Progressive Party, the Mohammeds. Secondly, if you look at the social media and the people who are reporting, even Rickford Burke, who was a couple months ago saying they had, you remember the cabotage issue? Saying we're in bed with them, he now has a favorable view of them. The entire opposition media that historically criticized the PP, they're supportive of them. So, coming back to what I was saying, I was speaking about they feel that we must protect them at all costs, in spite of all the sanctions, their tax evasion, etc. But this is not new. In 2022, I made it clear how we will act against people who commit illegality. And I called Azruddin Mohammed's name in 2022 when they were so-called cozy with the government, as Apnu said. I called his name publicly in a press conference, and I said, we will not condone any illegality, because if he is involved in murdering anyone, he would face the consequences. That is what I said, because at that time they were trying to drag us into this issue. 2022, I said that. I called his name long before he even started the Facebook profile that he had. Maybe, I don't know, but that was since then. And now we kept to our word. The PPP will not condone it. So we've proven the opposition wrong, and now they are in bed with the Mohammeds through their trolls and through engagements with them, their support. Now they've gone silent. They've gone silent on him. You notice that? They've gone silent. So we made it, you said about we're not taking action. We said right at the beginning, when the sanctions were announced, the same day, we met with the FIU and the central bank, and we said, is our system exposed? Because we could not run the risk of all Guyanese suffering because of the Mohammeds. And that was what was going to happen. So we said there has to be an orderly disengagement by the state from the Mohammeds in compliance with the sanction, both the spirit and the letter of the sanction. We had to do that. We then, the cambio license was suspended. Recently he said we suspended his cambio license because we're vindictive. So he must be allowed, contrary to sanction, to have a cambio license and to have an accounts in the banks, and then put at risk the entire. We get one sanction, all the banks in Ghana are sanctioned by the US. You can't conduct business with the US. What would these exporters do? What would you do if you make a purchase online? Nothing, you can't do it. We then said every business, and that is what has been happening over the course of the year. Disengagement. And they're upset with that because they believe they must function as per normal. The father said that at the beginning. This is all not because he was sanctioned by the US. You notice he avoids that. He doesn't talk about the gold smuggling or that at all. It's just all this big bad PPP because his son wants to run and his son is popular. His son doesn't pose a threat to the PPP. His son doesn't pose any threat to the PPP. But we are defending ourselves because he thinks we have an obligation to protect him. And look at the people who are supporting him now. Look, every day news source would be favorable comments about him, or like the Travis Shea story, PPP official. They're ridiculous, blatant lie. Blatant lie. And they issue all kinds of statements all day long. The vilest statements from the Mohammed. Look at the impunity that he acts with. The impunity. So someone flies a drone over your building. You're unhappy with it. The man is not on your property. So you call the police and say, someone is flying a drone over my building. I don't know whether it's illegal or not, but you should stop him because he's putting my life at risk. You call the police. You don't pick up a bunch of thugs and drive down the road and hit the guy's vehicle, ram his vehicle, and threaten him, and try to hold him like that. If the guy claimed kidnap, you don't do that. You call the police. You're not law enforcement. It's not in your property. But people now, they're making themselves be the victim of this. Some of the PPP conspiracy again. But it's their way of operating, bullying people all the time because they believe that they have money. But 2022, I said that. These rich guys, they were not beating the bush in the period before the elections. They may make a financial contribution to all the parties, but we have no obligation to defend his illegality. So look at the recent issue. It gives you an idea of the impunity with which people operate. And it's the inability to act with this impunity that hurts them a lot. They believe that there are two sets of laws in this country, one for them and one for ordinary people or other people. You can seize people's vehicles, GRA can do that, they can charge them taxes, but not when it comes to them. And we must ignore the fact that 10,000 kilograms of gold were smuggled out of the country in only a small period, and they owe $11 billion in taxes on that. And there's detail as to why. Because there's one figure declared here and another figure declared in the United States. So there's documentary evidence to this matter. So I did not want it this week again. That's why I ignored them in my course of my conversation. But every week they put out some little bit and then they complain, oh, the PPP is against them. Some little lie, like me and Nandalal met with him and said that we were not, if his son run, we would send GRA after him. The guy needs medical help. Anything else? Thank you.